Welcome to episode 177 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to Conor O'Brien from Villagers about their new album, That Golden Time. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Nate Arthur from Blancmange, so check it out. And if you like the podcast, please subscribe on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Following the kaleidoscopic adventures of Villagers' fifth album, Fever Dreams, award-winning Dublin singer-songwriter Conor O'Brien returns with That Golden Time. In this interview, Conor discusses the writing and recording of the album. We delve into Villagers' previous albums, favourite songs, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Conor O'Brien from Villagers. So hi Conor, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
It's great to have you. I like to go back to the start.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
Oh, the first real music the first music that really got me interested was film music. So it wasn't really a band. It was the music from An American Tail, the Don Bluth cartoon with Fievel the mouse, and that sort of beautiful story. I remember crying in the cinema and sort of singing the chords and stuff when I was a child, and that got me hooked into sort of film music. And then I got really into all the kind of Danny Elfman scores and John Williams stuff. But then it was the first band was the Kinks. I think my sister and her friend were playing the Kinks on their Walkman, and I kept sneaking into their room and putting it around my ears and listening to the Kinks. And I thought it was girls' music because I only ever saw girls listening to it. But so I thought I was doing something that you weren't allowed to do, and it was like this forbidden fruit, strange music. And then it was after the Kinks. After the Kinks, it got embarrassing then.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it was probably, I think the first thing I bought was Beck, actually, which isn't embarrassing at all. That was my first cassette tape, Mellow Gold Beck, which blew my mind. But then it was like Green Day and The Offspring and all that kind of poppy punk stuff. And then it was like Pink Floyd, Radiohead. Kind of went into that world. But that whole time, like in my family's house, there was always like, jazz singers and Nina Simone and Ella Fitzgerald and all the Duke Ellington stuff, and all that stuff was kind of floating around as well. So it was kind of a nice mixture of things.
What was the first Irish artist that inspired your music?
The first Irish artists. Well, there was a CD knocking about my parents' house when I was growing up of Christy Moore live at the Point. And I remember playing that over and over again and just being kind of fascinated by the rhythm of his voice and how he used it almost like a drum, and how he used his guitar almost like a drum as well. And I remember just, because for me, drums were my first kind of instrument. I was really obsessed with kind of going into shops and playing the drum kits there. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh wow, he's really instilling a sense of rhythm into his music, and it's actually very physical. You can hear everything being knocked around, and it was quite exciting to hear that. And there was sort of a sense of humor to it as well, and also a bit of depth, and I quite enjoyed that. And then I guess when I was a little older, my friends at school were kind of giving me some Van Morrison stuff. And that was a really big deal. Van Morrison was kind of like Astral Weeks in school for me. It was like a big album. And then later on, I got more into like Moondance and some of the later stuff. And even the later stuff when it got all 80s and slightly tacky sounding, I'm kind of digging that as well. And yeah. So those. And then obviously, I guess the big one, U2. I remember hearing, I was kind of anti U2 because they felt like my older siblings' band, and I was trying to find my own band, but I just couldn't stay away from kind of Achtung Baby and Zoo TV and all that kind of stuff, the Zeropa kind of world. I thought that was kind of when I started getting to know them, when they were doing that slightly ironic shtick So it was kind of mad and interesting and weird.
Yeah,
Um,
Acton Baby's my favorite album of all time.
cool, yeah,
Yeah. And I was lucky
great
enough to
record.
see, yes, I seen Zoo TV in the RDS. I think it was 93.
No,
Amazing.
very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, they were really pushing the boundaries. Like it's actually easy.
Yeah.
It's very easy to forget how bold that was. The moves that they made back then, because they were sort of on the verge of becoming this, really important um heart and sleeve kind of rock band, Springsteen-esque or whatever, and then they just took this bizarre left turn, and it just worked. And like what a bold move. So
Yeah.
interesting.
I think it's the boldest move in music since the Beatles made Sergeant Pepper.
Ah, interesting. There's a whole essay in that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Has music always been the career path you wanted to follow, or did you have other ambitions growing up?
Um, at the beginning, when I was much younger, I was adamant that I would be an animator. I was really into the idea of becoming an animator ever since I saw that Don Bluth film. And I just kept trying to make little animations when I was a kid, and and I drew a lot, and it was all about visual art really for me until I kind of started playing guitar around 12. My older brother started showing me some of the chords, and then I just dropped the animation buzz and just wanted to play music. So it was always creative, but I'm kind of looking back, I think, and even looking forward and sideways, I think I'm kind of not really suited for much else. So it's kind of it's not really a choice. It's more like it chose me because I would be absolutely disastrous. Like when I was in the Cub Scouts for a while and I came last at the fire making um competition. I literally was the only one there still trying to make a fire and everyone else had finished like 20 minutes. So that's gives you a sense of my DIY skills, I suppose.
So, what age were you when you started hearing melodies and songs in your head?
As soon as I learned three chords, basically, that old cliche. But as soon as I learned three chords, I wrote a song and it was called Psychic, and it was about being afraid that your friend can read your thoughts. and and then I learned the fourth chord. I remember it was the G chord. And I was like, whoa. So I wrote a second song with four chords in it. Um and that was basically like prog rock because four chords. And they all kind of sounded like bad sort of versions of early Green Day and Offspring, all that kind of punk stuff that was happening in the mid 90s. And but yes, and then from that I was completely hooked. I just kept doing bad versions of pretty good songs that I'd heard and that captured my imagination. I would just try and do my own version of that. Really, that's kind of how I started doing it all. And then had the odd little moment where I was like, "Oh, that bit's kind of new. That sounds a little bit like something that isn't in that song I was copying." And then yeah, and I just couldn't stop really. I stopped kind of. I had a couple of friends who were like, "Where did you go for all those years?" I stopped going out to play football, and that suited me fine.
Has your songwriting process changed, from the beginning right up to now? I mean, what comes first for you? Does melodies just fall from the sky into your head, or lyrical ideas? How does it work?
It's different all the time. It like on the newest record that I've just done. It's kind of some of the songs were just like, for instance, that Golden Time, the single, that was a poem for so long. I couldn't figure out what music to put behind it. So I started doing lots of different versions of it, and it just kept until it found a home, really, musical home. So that kind of that works sometimes, and then other times it can be, I have a whole song written with a structure and everything, but I'm just mumbling mostly sounds, and eventually those sounds turn into words. So it's always coming at it from different angles, I think. I think I've always enjoyed that because it keeps you fit at it a little bit.
Well, congratulations on the new album. It's absolutely fantastic. That Golden
Thank
Time,
you.
it's an absolute banger. When did you start it?
Um, that's a funny question because it doesn't really. There's never a solid beginning to making these records because some of the like one of the songs was started in 2014. So and there's a few other elements that were kind of started since then, or even before that, maybe. So it's always kind of, I'm always working from stuff that I have left over. I'm never really starting from a blank slate. But I guess I got deep into it, you know, maybe midway through touring Fever Dreams. Like I remember we had to go and we were gonna go on tour in Europe, and I got COVID for the first time. Uh, and this is kind of like still when it was kind of starting to be less serious, but it was still like you definitely shouldn't travel. And I was feeling pretty crap. And then I wrote that week. I mean, my poor band and crew and everyone were at the airport waiting, and I just couldn't go. So I just straight away just got into writing, and I wrote Brother Hen that week. So a bunch of the songs were kind of written quite fast during the Fever Dreams touring period, but some of them were from years and years ago, really. Yeah.
Well, you also mentioned the album title track, That Golden Time. You know, it's a fantastic track. And that's why I said Park Pink Floyd, because I got complete Pink Floyd vibes of it. Was that a bit of an inspiration there? You said you tried various versions.
Yeah, definitely an inspiration. I don't think I was doing it super consciously at the time. And in fact, I remember recording it as a sort of, I had already almost given up on trying to find a musical home for those words. And I was like, I'll just do this version. And that's the moment you relax. And you know, obviously when you relax, your musical obsessions start coming to the fore. So I guess, you know, I just did a Floydian version of it, which I know very, very well because I was always obsessed with that kind of metal era Pink Floyd, that kind of early 70s kind of Live at Pompeii kind of version of Pink Floyd with echoes and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's brazen. Like it sounds exactly like a mixture of that and a couple of the other tunes, Dark Side of the Moon and Dark Side of the Moon and stuff. But I don't care. I'm proud of it.
No,
I'm proud of
and so you should be, because it's, you know, it's an amazing track, and the video as well, you know, combined with the video and the music, you know, it's amazing, you know, to watch, you know. And the video is the moth, which is also on the front cover of the album, with the coin. So what's the meaning behind all that?
Yeah, when I came around to doing the album artwork, I really wanted it to be quite simple, minimal, and but also quite literal about the themes on the record. And the two main themes on this album for me are kind of extreme change, like metamorphosis, obviously, which is what moths go through, the nocturnal creatures that they are. And then also they tend to confuse man-made light with the moonlight. And I just thought that was an interesting metaphor for what's happening to us right now, with being, you know, confusing um I guess universal truths with more kind of culturally determined kind of tropes which are being fed to us through our screens every day and changing our brain chemistry and making us get dumber and dumber. And I just thought it was interesting to kind of place the money, the idea of money being like the value systems that we follow in the same way that a moth follows the moonlight, but it might not actually be the moonlight. It might be the cause of the moth's untimely demise. So there's a few different things going on. It was the old 20 pence coin, which I grew up with, um, and I just thought it was interesting to to sort of give that a little tiny personal twist, I suppose, to the whole thing, really, instead of a dollar or whatever or euro, kind of fun thing.
You're saying about, you know, people, you know, looking through their devices and sort of, you know, getting brainwashed or fed whatever information, but it's also going to be quite crazy because when you go to perform these songs live, a lot of people will be watching your performance through their phone.
Mm. Yeah, okay.
Do you mind that? You know, it really annoys me at gigs when people just stand with their phone.
Oh God, yeah. I know. I was at a gig actually, recently, about a month ago, and I nearly decked this guy. Well, I didn't nearly deck him, but he really was so rude. It's just this kid who was like just filming the whole thing, big tall guy just holding it up, and no one could see behind him. And I just thought, what's happening? What's he doing? Is he live streaming this? And he was doing it over this woman's head, and the woman's partner very kindly asked him to stop, and he just looked at him and kept doing it. And I was like, what is happening in humanity? But yeah, so that's that's not exactly the best way to live in the here and now of music, is it? Feeling the vibrations with everybody else in the room, and that's kind of what it's meant to be about. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's not so good.
There's so many great tracks on the album. Let's talk about someone. I love First Responder. Can you tell me about that song and the sort of the genesis of the track?
Yeah, I mean, it came from a real life first responder that I met at a medical emergency I was involved in, and he just presented himself as this angelic. He was an angel in my mind. And he just left his dinner near our house to come and, help us. And he's not getting paid, and he's a volunteer, and he was just a super softly spoken man who, like, after I thought about it for a couple of weeks afterwards, and I just thought, that's the kind of person that can humble you out of. He's just quietly being heroic, like so many people are. And it's very easy when you're in the arts world to kind of forget that that's a path that you can take, because the world that I've chosen, the path that I've chosen, is so driven quite often by ego and performative, these days, performative sanctimony, I guess, and but performative everything really. And this, I guess, this guy was just allowing himself to be a cog in his local community, and I thought that was really inspiring, and I kind of couldn't stop thinking about it. So that usually when that happens, I usually write a song about it, and this was the song. But it also became like I guess an allegory or a metaphor for something slightly bigger, which is, I'm kind of interested in texts that persevere throughout time, like things like original sin and all these strange biblical, like Christian ideas and otherwise, and all these things that I always wonder, like, why did they persevere and why have they been useful? I think for him, for me, his presence kind of became a symbol for like something outside of ourselves, which we can all attach ourselves, like we can all, there's a sense that there's something more that we can get beyond all of this kind of ideological conversation that we have all day long. There's a transcendence we can attain, which is above these ideas of moral purity or all these ridiculous, unattainable things. I'm slightly rambling, but yeah, you kind of have to listen to the song, really.
Yeah. I related to it very well because it's an amazing song anyway. But I did a first aid course recently, which I think everybody should do. It was just a 1 day thing, So yeah, it's everybody should do it, to respond to someone, in an accident or whatever, and it's really helpful.
Big time. That's amazing. Yeah, I'll write a song about you next album.
Yeah, you lucky one. Now, again, another brilliant track. With you make your director debut in the video. It's a freaky video. You go from like a Jedi to a clown to a demon and more, and which are all equally freaky. It's fantastic. How did it feel making your first video?
Well, strictly speaking, it was actually kind of my second video, I guess. I made a video for Villagers back in 2009, which is before I was signed or anything. So I guess it's my first signed video as a signed musician to a record label. But the first one was kind of a very DIY, hand-drawn thing. And so this was a little bit slightly posher. I filmed, well, not that much posher. I filmed myself with my phone and then I put it into my laptop and started, 3D bit mapping my face, I guess, and started putting different demons and different kinds of masks on my face and different backgrounds as well. And it was just really fun. It was a nice way I think videos are always tricky because they're kind of, you've spent so long on a song and you kind of want people to experience that song with their own images and their own imagery. That, to me, that's what the magic of music is, that people bring their own sense of what's happening to the song and they finish the song off through the listening experience. And sometimes I think videos can kind of kill that, destroy that. Whenever I hear that there's a new song out by a band I like, I try not to watch the video. I try to hear the music first. And but this was kind of fun because I thought it was like, well, you know what? I'm the singer, so I'm going to sing directly to camera, and then I'm just going to distort my face and see where it goes. So yeah, I quite enjoyed that. It's a good process.
Last track on the album, Money on the Mind. It's a great way the finish the album. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, Money in the Mind. I mean, to me, it's kind of the moment when the protagonist of the album is has finally reached fat cat status and has succumbed to has destroyed all ethical concerns for material gain and fully succumbed to the system. Um, but there's kind of a twist in it in terms of right at the end of the song, the singer keeps saying, "But my money's on the mind," or "I've got money on the mind. I've got money on the mind," thinking of money all the time. And then at the end it says, "But my money's on the mind," as if I'm betting on the human intellect, the human mind to get us out of this this mess. Uh, so there's sort of a hint of hope, which I see as the transcendence, that the first responder was bringing to the situation, and that throughout the album there are moments of kind of being amongst the weeds, but then suddenly you're being pulled out of them and you're kind of observing from a slightly more contextual perspective. And I think Money in the Mind is perhaps kind of a metaphorical thing for that. It went through many phases. It was kind of an indie rock tune for a while. It sort of sounded like Supergrass for a while, which was really strange, like vintage Supergrass. And then it was like, yeah, it was like kind of electric guitar, fuzzy indie rock. And then I pulled it all back, and I had this idea that I wanted to involve a soprano singer, um, and she was amazing. Katie Kelly, she I saw her doing it at Ennio Morricone night, and she sang so beautifully all of the classics. And so I found her and contacted her, and yeah, that was part of the inspiration of slowing the song down and bringing it into a slightly more uh, cinematic place, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to end the album. When you're writing albums, do you always see them like in a movie, a beginning, middle, and end?
Uh, I wish it's usually a big mess. I usually have no idea what I'm doing most of the time, and I just persevere at not knowing what I'm doing, and I just keep not knowing what I'm doing as long as I can, and then eventually some shape starts coming out of it, And so it's a weird one because I'd be lying if I said I understood when started coming together, because I just don't. It's such a mysterious kind of process to me. But the trick is to just keep kind of showing up and making yourself open to it. Um, and I'm kind of obsessed with it at this stage. It's kind of, if I'm in the middle of something that I feel like I haven't quite cracked, it is the lens through which I'm experiencing the world, basically. So if I'm going out to get my groceries or whatever, I'm doing them in the middle eight of the song that hasn't been quite finished. So that's kind of the trick, I think.
Well, now that it is done, and again, it's fantastic. I don't know each song, it's like your babies, but at the moment today, now, what song on the album do you feel most connected to?
Oh, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is a song called "Behind That Curtain," um, which is, I think it's the longest song on the album, but I just think the lyrics are quite funny, but also deep, and I like that mixture. They're sort of slightly caustic, kind of embittered words, but they're kind of ridiculous as well, about how about a land of loonies, about how the world has gone completely insane. And but they also, it's kind of also the crux of the record is in that song, where the whole album is kind of, I think, sort of moving towards that kind of the world's a stage idea, that from As You Like It, the whole idea of the world being a stage. And then this song, it's kind of like you're invited as the audience member to come onto the stage and to peek behind the curtains at the workings behind it, and just seeing all the strange power relationships and all the complication and all the nuance and all the things that are making it go round, and how disgusting and messy and glorious it all is. And I think that's why I wanted the explosion of the clarinet, the jazzy clarinet moment to happen at the end, where it's kind of a sort of sordid celebration of everything. So, yeah, that was kind of fun to make, really. It used to be before I added the clarinet jazz freak out, it was actually a much slower musical section, which included a recording of my dad, actually, which I secretly recorded him when he was telling me all about, Ireland in the 40s and 50s, and just the kind of levels, the levels of poverty that he saw from his being brought to his grandparents' house and stuff, and 6 families to one bathroom, and just the tenement sort of situation in Dublin. And I just found it fascinating to kind of, because I was reading the Fintan O'Toole book at the time, We Don't Know Ourselves, and I was trying to place my childhood, which I took for granted, into a wider context, and sort of realize how bizarre it was to be kind of coming of age, and I guess the Celtic Tiger situation in a suburban Dublin, and the difference in my circumstances to just 2 generations before me. And all of that was kind of mixing up with the whole, once you've gone behind the curtain, you're seeing how it's all worked and what's, what built up to this moment kind of thing. So it was a bit more, I guess it was not as easy going. So I ditched it for a clarinet jazz solo and just had a little dance instead, really.
Well, you'll be taking the album on tour. You're playing your biggest headline show today at Dublin's Trinity College, and you'll also be playing London's Royal Festival Hall in June. So you're looking forward to going out and doing the show, and also, the album's quite complex. So how hard is it, to reproduce on a stage?
It's quite difficult. We've just done 10 days of rehearsals, actually, with the band. I just got them together for 5 days and then another 5 days. And usually by the end of that, from my experience, you're pretty tight. But but we're not really tight. I think we're more, we found ourselves experimenting with these songs and using the album as kind of a blueprint for what they could be in the live show. So I'm a little nervous about the first couple of shows, because the first show we're doing is a big festival in Madrid, and then the second one is a headline show in AB in Brussels, which is a really big, cool headline show to do, and and we're still sort of messing about with the songs right now. So I think it'll be an interesting experience to see where we take them. At least for the first, interesting's the word for the first few shows. But by the time we get round to Trinity and London, and then later in the year, all the other places, I think we'll be a tight ship, hopefully.
There's no Belfast show yet, is there?
Oh, there is. It's in the pipeline. Yeah.
Good.
100%. But I can't remember the exact date right now. Yeah. But it's definitely in the pipeline for sure.
Good. You've released 5 studio albums prior to that golden time, and I'm going to mention a couple. So just like you to tell me what comes into your head immediately when I mention it. So I'll start off with Becoming a Jackal.
What comes into my head?
Yeah.
Naivety, beautiful naivety, idealism. I don't know. I feel like a completely different person, even though I was kind of mid to late 20s, nearly, actually, at that stage. I still felt kind of like a child. I hadn't really experienced life as much as now, obviously, but that was a real obsessive time making that record, and I was living in a house with a bunch of other people, very kind of low rent, kind of weird sort of situation with very kind landlords. And so I had no sense of time. I was just working in this little outdoor barn area until morning kind of thing. And I was just there was parties going on in the house. It was just 20s, in that time when you're in your 20s, and I was lucky enough to have a space to create music. So that came from a place of very much naivety, and I was living in a bubble, really. I wasn't really in the real world at that stage, which can be good for art, I think. Yeah.
And it was a huge album, you know. It must have been a crazy period in your life, was it?
Really crazy. Yeah. I mean, it was everything happened at the same time at that, in my life, The album just got launched, and then loads of crazy things in my personal life and bereavements, and it was just everything just went. I was like, yeah, it was an intense couple of years, pretty crazy. And I hadn't seen that much of the world ever in my life. So it was just on top of everything. I was jumping in planes and boats, and yeah, pretty mental.
Darling Arithmetic.
Oh yeah, you skipped to Wayland. uh,
Well, we'll go to. I was just. I didn't want to go through every single one. I was thinking about a Wayland because I was thinking, you won the Choice Music Prize, and it was shortlisted for the Mercury. Let's go to Wayland, right? We'll go. Let's go to that because obviously you want to talk about that.
No, it's totally fine. Yeah, do you want? I mean, well, that was a fun album. It was really that was a really I was obsessively working on that as well, but it was kind of more like stressy because we had started the whole Villagers thing at that stage, so it was lots of touring, lots of festivals, and then I had this idea that I really wanted to make an epic cinematic masterpiece. So I was just spending all my free time locked away, just making this weird little semi-electronic, semi-folk kind of indie rock, brass driven. I don't know what it was, and but it was a lovely. By the time I'd sort of done all the demos up to a very high kind of level, it was just really nice to get with the guys, and we all went. The band at the time went to Tommy's place in Letterkenny, and we just bashed it around the studio and yeah, that was a really nice experience. It was cool, good times.
And how did you feel about the awards? You were shortlisted for the Mercury Music Prize, and it won the Choice Music Prize.
Yeah, I think the Mercury was the Jackal one, was it, or maybe it was both? I can't remember. But yeah, no, it was good. It was exciting. It was exciting. I just remember that whole period of my life as being kind of a bit of a blur. Like it was definitely the partying was peaking on tour, and it was kind of intense. So I'm not very lucid when I talk about that period. It wasn't a very lucid time. So yeah.
Okay, let's go for Darling Arithmetic.
Yeah, Darling Arithmetic. It was I kind of retreated and just went back to an acoustic guitar, and I really had this idea. I was very into Will Oldham at the time and Bonnie Prince Billy, and I had this feeling I wanted to connect with that sort of vulnerability and that sort of naked sound a little bit. I don't know if I really went there in the final results, but that was kind of an impetus for it. And I just got really into recording myself. I started using this little 16 track, which I got previously, like I got when I was a teenager. And it just started sounding really good. And I just thought, I can actually just do this all myself in my little barn, my little farm barn. And it just kind of, it slowly it just became this kind of mood piece. I feel the whole album, the whole thing's got this ambient kind of gentle rumbling throughout, and lots of slowed down wine glasses, and some strange melodies and mellotrons, and just these quite gentle, delicate songs that about personal development, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. It kind of did what it said on the tin. I think that album. I wanted to make something simple, I think.
And how did you feel when it won the Ivor Novello Award for Best Album? I mean, you can't go any better than that.
It felt alien. I mean, I didn't really. I I took a couple of beta blockers that day because I was on a I was I was out a bit of anxiety and I knew it was like, all the heads were there. Um Whatever, Elton John, all the I remember sitting beside Portishead and Blur and I remember Damon Albarn going up on stage and mentioning my song Hot Scary Summer which had just played, and I was just like, this is so real. All these people who've written songs that I've really admired over the years, and they're kind of listening to me, and then they called my name and I was like, oh bollocks, I have to go up there now. um so I just gave a very short, humbling speech, but I did feel like I was really proud of that. I felt it would be hard to accept an award if you felt like it was a bit of a farce, but I felt that album felt worthy, I think, of a nice statue of Euterpe, the Greek, what is it, the Greek god of the bard. I can't remember exactly what it is, but yeah.
Well, we might as well go the whole hog and talk about the last two. The Art of Pretending to Swim. What comes into your head there?
Experimentation. I got this idea that I just wanted to write jams. I remember just that feeling of like, I want to write some jams, like things that people can stick on, and the hook is there pretty early. I haven't tried that before. So Trick of the Light sort of came out pretty quickly, and Long Time Waiting and Fool, and they all had these pretty standard pop hooks to them. Well, in my mind, pretty standard pop hooks. But the lyrics, I kind of still wanted to make sure the lyrics were uh, delving a bit deeper. So if you wanted to, you could get it into them in a slightly different way. And if I stripped them back, they would work in a slightly different way. I still had that in my mind, but I really just wanted to make jams. Um, but for me, the second half of that album's far more interesting. Actually, it's slightly front loaded with, I guess, singles and things. But when you get into the second half, it gets really weird, and it's like a different album. Love Came with All That It Brings, and Hold Me Down, and ADAT. I think they're all quite interesting musical experiments in a purely musical sense, not in a kind of, uh, um, what am I trying to say? Not in a sort of emotional sense necessarily, more just in a textural sense, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, really, really, really I kind of dig that one. I wish I got someone to mix it though. I mixed that one myself before I was ready, and I think it's pretty good, but I can hear how it could have been better so I barely listened to it ever.
Well, I suppose it'll get remastered or repackaged down the line.
Yeah.
Sure, you get somebody to do it.
Yeah, salvage it from its.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about Fever Dreams?
Yeah, Fever Dreams. That was a full band affair. I really jumped into the idea of bringing very half finished songs to the band that time, and that was a lot of fun because that band had kind of stuck around for a little while, and we'd kind of gotten into a certain groove, and I wanted to continue it. The tour just felt so good. We were in a strange place with some of the older songs, and I liked that. We were just very fearless in our kind of reconstructions of the tunes. So I just thought, let's just dive right into a studio, and I'll bring these little half finished things, and we'll start recording. And it kind of worked. I mean, we got some really interesting things out of it, which I wouldn't have been able to do myself at all. And then I would bring those half finished ideas with the band back to my home studio, and then I'd write songs around a lot of them, and I'd edit them and sort of maybe take the best bits of the jam, put them together a bit more, and then I'd bring that back to the band. So there was a few backs and forths, between home studio and band. So I'd never done that before, really, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I just wanted to make a big kind of surrealistic, celebratory thing. I think that was my plan. I had Odyssey and Oracle by the Zombies in my head, and I just had these kind of flowery ideas, musical ideas, really.
It just seems that with every album, there's a completely different approach musically.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of them. I mean, I think the new one slightly harks back to the very first Villagers album, actually. Funnily enough, because I played all the instruments on the first Villagers album, and then I kind of ditched that idea. Well, no, I did that on the third one as well, but with this one, I pretty much did that. And and this one, I just wanted to write words which are quite gently, they accost you gently. They're sort of gently caustic songs. You know, they can be they're slightly spiky, but they're never not graceful, I think.
If people want to understand the music of Villagers, what are the 5 songs they should listen to?
Oh wow. What are the 5 Villagers songs I should listen to? Oh yeah.
Yeah, if I wanted to make a playlist of 5 Villagers songs, what should I have on there?
Oh geez, I don't know. That's a hard question. I mean, there's the new album. There's a song called "Truly Alone," which is on the first song on the new record, and I feel like that confronts you quite quietly. And I think I quite like often I like to do that to try and confront the listener with a whisper, you know, rather than
Yeah, yeah.
aggressively.
Love that song. Love that song.
Thank you. But yeah, so I think that might be a good one corner of the 5, a nice little strange, gentle song, which is spiky. And then I think God, there's a song called Earthly Pleasure, which I was surprised and delighted to find quite high on the list recently when I asked the Villagers fans on social media to send me the songs that they wanted to hear on the upcoming tours, and Earthly Pleasure just kept appearing, which quite surprised me because I thought it was just a really weird song with too many words, and I thought I almost badly rap in some of it. And so we've started rehearsing that again recently, and it's an absolute joy to play live. So I can't wait to bring that back. So I would probably put that one on the list, and then what else? There's I should probably get one from the first album. Maybe a song called "Set Tigers Free." That's on the first album. I think that's quite a nice little groover. It's got a lightly bossa nova feel about it. Very light bossa nova feel, which I always try and flirt with. Never going too close to it though. And yeah, kind of dark lyrics. It delves into um, the dark recesses of the mind a little bit, but it's got a catchy melody. So I like those two things mixed together. And then the fourth one would be um, I don't know, like Everything I Am Is Yours. It's kind of an obvious choice, but it's one of the more popular songs, I suppose, of mine. But I'm really proud of it. Just a simple, very simple song. A song of love and devotion and um, a little bit of darkness as well. And I kind of like that one. I always find it funny when people tell me they use it for weddings and things because some of the lyrics are kind of a bit close to the bone. But it's really cool. And then the last one I would choose would be I'll choose another one from the new album because that's the one I'm shamelessly plugging. Maybe a song, maybe that Golden Time, just for all the Floyd heads and anyone who likes hard panned vocals and hard panned other instruments in a nice late '60s, early '70s fashion. For all the pop pickers, all the nerds and the geeks, it's for them.
All good choices. They will go on my playlist.
Oh, cool, nice.
Just a few more, Conor. I like to ask my guests the following questions. For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
Ooh, wow. I would have to say maybe Homogenic by Bjork. I just remember that album being in my CD Walkman, skipping all the time in my CD Walkman as I was trying to walk. Um, and just, I have very fond memories of my brain exploding. Like I just felt like my mind was exploding with the possibilities of the music that she was presenting on that record. Um, I really remember walking home from school with it quite often actually, and just living inside of it and like reading all the liner notes and just who is this legendary creature from Iceland? Like, oh my God, what is this voice and what is this production? Um, and it was just a great time. Yeah, I would have been sort of 14, 15. and just when you're discovering music, that was a big one for me. Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Fantastic album.
I mean, so many. I could go on, but
If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career, what would it be?
a musical moment. There's been a couple of shows where I felt like I was just in heaven. Um, I would say maybe one of the Ivy Gardens shows that we did, because it was one of the first times I experienced, like, it was 4,000 people and they were all there because they knew villagers. It wasn't like playing to a festival tent where you were trying to win people over. It was literally thousands of people who were singing the words of the songs. And I felt this strange calmness that day. I remember it just being really, uh, really easy. I felt like I was floating on a cloud the whole time. It was really, really lovely time. It's one of the reasons you do it, you know, you're high on that feeling for so long afterwards, because there was a sense of the songs were the thing that was gluing everyone, and I didn't really feel like I was even there. It was weird. I felt like I always have that feeling where I'm like, people are looking at you because you're on stage singing the songs, but I always feel like going down to them and going, what are you all looking at? Like, and then looking up at myself on the stage. Um, I don't really, yeah, they're the best shows when you just feel like you disappear a little bit. So that was a good one. But yeah, so many, so much time, so often the actual process, you know, the process of creating things is really one of my favorite things in the world. When you really get onto something and you're like, oh my God, I have to see this through. I can see this can be a good idea, and I can imagine this working. That's one of the most exciting things for me, I think.
You've been famous for a long time now. What's the stupidest thing you've ever bought?
Did I ever what?
Ever bought?
Bought?
Yeah.
What was the first half? I've been famous.
Yeah, well, you are, of course you are.
Wow, no. It's only a certain type of nerd that knows villagers, but I love them. I love those nerds. Um, uh, what was the stupidest thing I ever bought? Like. Oh God, I don't know. Lockdown, definitely. I definitely got a couple of things after a bottle of wine at about 4 a.m. during lockdown on the internet.
Oh, no,
Being
yeah,
online,
everyone, I've done that. And then a delivery comes to your door and you're like, I can't remember
what the
ordering that.
fuck is this? Yeah, well, one of them was actually not stupid. It's kind of cool. I probably wouldn't have bought it if I was sober, but it was a, a huge, huge poster of showing um like all the songs that the Beatles ever did and who played what. So it's like a diagram of who played what on each
Wow.
song. And I don't know if it's correct or anything. I haven't gone into it to check, but it looks kind of cool. So I stuck it up. I just stuck it up on the wall, but I have no memory of purchasing it or anything else. That's weird. Yeah.
So, Conor, let's be done. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we wrap up? Anything else coming up in the immediate future?
Um. Yeah. Well, I've actually I'm gonna have a book coming out as well this year, which
Oh,
hasn't been fully announced yet. But it's a book of all the lyrics of Villagers since the very beginning. So it's lots and lots of songs. I think it's about 240 pages long with lots of drawings and notebooks and scribbles and just lots of different things, photos from the years. So I'm really excited about that. It's taken us about a year and a half to compile the whole thing and to figure out how to present it all. And we just signed off on it like a week ago. So that's going to be in
what's
the
it
running.
called?
I think it's going to be called Passing a Message is the main title, and then like the lyrics and artwork of Villagers. You know, maybe I'm not allowed to say that yet. I'm probably not allowed to say that yet, but maybe it's fine. But yeah, so I'm very excited about that. It's been a real like trip through memory lane, and lots of bad haircuts and stuff. So yeah.
Well, look forward to that.
Nice one.
No, Conor, thank you very much for taking the time to do this. I'll have this out in a few weeks, run about the album release, and I'm really, really enjoying the album. It's absolutely fantastic, as always.
Thanks so much. It's really nice to speak to people who've actually finally have heard it. So it's a real blast and a pleasure to be on XS Noize. Thanks for having me.